Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of One Vision. This is Theo, your host for today's episode. For today, you guys are in for a treat because right off the end of the big news that was, a few weeks ago about Grasshopper Bank and launching their own MCP server, which is the first one of the banks to do that in the United States, I have a chance to invite Pete Chapman, CTO of Grasshopper Bank, on the show today. Welcome to the show, Pete.
Thanks so much, Theo. I'm looking forward to the conversation. The response from the industry after our announcement has been a little bit overwhelming, so I'm just tremendously excited to be able to come on here and talk with you a little bit about it, and excited to see where the conversation goes.
Same here. I hope it's good excitement. Good, overwhelming,
Yes.
not okay. Awesome. I trust that. All right. Before we start, can you let our listeners maybe talk us through a little bit about what you do in the bank and who is Pete, the mastermind behind all of this?
Sure. Well, I'm not sure I'm the mastermind, but I'm involved one way or another. A lot of people are working on it, but maybe I'll start with a little bit about who I am, what I'm up to, and then what we're up to at Grasshopper. So, a little bit about myself. So, I've been in fintech for just over 20 years, which is crazy. To date myself with that comment right there, I still feel like I'm 25 and I'm nothing close to it. My kids remind me of that often. But throughout my career, I've kind of like had two phases to my career. It's all been in fintech and banking. But half of that career has been working for banks, and half of it has been working for fintechs who serve U.S. banks one way or another. So I started my career working in a handful of Boston-based financial institutions and caught the bug for digital innovation, digital banking, right, all of that fun stuff. And through that, and through enabling some of that at the Boston-based FI that I worked at the time, I ended up starting to get to know the fintech ecosystem very, very well. And one thing led to another, and after spending a couple of years at those banks, helping them to grow and helping them to execute on a digital strategy and having a lot of fun doing that, I decided to jump over to the dark side and work for the first of three fintechs. So I worked for three fintechs, and one of them was a Dutch-based fintech called Backbase, who was looking to land and expand their presence in the U.S. Another one was an aggregator out of Utah called MX, who was fairly well known in the industry and grew up from initially being a PFM provider into a data aggregator. And then I worked for a Toronto-based company called Sensible, which was a digital receipts company that was acquired by Q2. So I spent about 8-9 years working for those three companies. And at all of those companies, it was kind of funny. I was like the resident banker, right? So they would ask me like, what do bankers think about this, right? And so I have a running joke here where when I'm at the banks, I'm one of the most technical people in the room. When I'm at the fintechs, I'm the business guy, right? And so ultimately, I helped those three fintechs, I think, kind of expand their growth, help them understand a little bit of product market fit, help them engage with financial institutions one way or another, and learned a lot there, and just fell in love with the whole startup culture and that ecosystem and everything that happens there. And so I honestly, Theo, did not think that I would come back to the banking side, but about 4.5 years ago, Mike Butler, our CEO at Grasshopper, gave me a call and said, "Hey, look, I'm going to do this thing at Grasshopper Bank, and we're a relatively young financial institution. We're looking to build it the right way. And one of the things we want to do, Pete, is we want to be, a fintech with a banking charter, and we want to, approach that the right way. And one of the things we want to do is bring the best parts of a startup culture here, right? And so that sounded really exciting to me, and one thing led to another, and I came to help out here at Grasshopper Bank and help lead the technology strategy to enable our digital business. So Theo, and like in a recap there, from my career, I feel like I've built a career in building bridges between fintechs and mid to down market financial institutions. I'm a big believer that one of the great things about the U.S. financial industry is that we've got so many different financial institutions there. I don't want to, see us going the way of Europe, where there's just 5 or 10 big banks in each country. I think access to capital is like a bedrock of our society. And I really do feel like the mid and down market financial institutions can and should be able to do that better than the tier one financial institutions. I think you have fintechs on one side who are great at tech, user experience, rapid development, all that stuff, and you got bankers on the other side who are really good at managing risk, listening to the clients, compliance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the bridge between those two helps those mid and down market financial institutions compete with the tier ones, and maybe not just compete, but maybe beat them as well. And so, anyways, I try to put myself in the middle of those two and help to kind of enable that, because I think it's a good thing. And it's been fun. It's been fun. So anyways, I came here to Grasshopper 4.5 years ago. Grasshopper is a relatively young bank. We're a digital bank based out of New York. We were founded about 6-7 years ago or so, and ultimately, we're not branch based. We are digital, purely digital. And we have spent the better part of that 6 or 7 years focusing on let's call it the innovation economy, right? And that's kind of a broad term right there. But we work with everyone from small businesses up to private equity funds, VC funds, et cetera, and everything a little bit in between there. And we've got a handful of different businesses that would kind of like go out to market and work with those different areas. We've got banking as a service. We've got digital small business banking. We've got fund and sponsor banking, right, et cetera. And then we've got things on the other side of the balance sheet, of course, around the SBA and the more traditional kind of lending products to support those different ecosystems. So it's been fun. So I've been essentially responsible for enabling a technology strategy for an emerging digital based bank, right, to build it the right way to enable access and ongoing reach out into those markets that I discussed. And this is kind of like, it's a fun opportunity, because oftentimes you step into a bank, right, and you're saddled with 45 years of technology decisions. Some of those may have been good, some of them may have been bad, right, and 45 years of process and all that stuff. And so it's just a very challenging thing to unwind a lot of that stuff. But we didn't have that problem here at Grasshopper. And so we feel like we've been able to concentrate on building things the right way, focus on the client, and ultimately, kind of stay a little bit leaner than maybe a traditional financial institution. We just so happen to be doing this at a time where, AI is becoming front and center. And so it's a perfect timing for a bank like us, where the technology like this comes into play, where we can think about kind of embedding it, at the core of kind of who we are to help us grow effectively, help us deliver for clients. So, anyways, that was a lot I just kind of threw out at you, but that's a little bit about myself and a little bit about Grasshopper Bank.
I like that. I think our paths probably crossed a few times, because you talk about Backbase and MX, and those are, companies that I know really, really well. And I love that you bring the fintech side and the banking side together, because that's what we need, right? We need a conduit between the two and bring the best of both worlds together. And I think you described it perfectly. So I'm glad we got the chance to talk today. And for those of you listening, this is Pete's first podcast, so I am very excited that I get to be the first one to interview you. So let's talk about the recent headlines, right? That was the big bank on the news. When I saw it, I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And then you take a step back and you look at the client that you were talking about, the innovation ecosystem, and it absolutely makes sense, because the people that you guys work with are a little bit more tech savvy. And I love that you were saying, because of by virtue, you guys are a digital bank and you're newer, you can afford to do a lot of these things faster and easier in a lot of regards compared to other ones. So walk us through a little bit behind the idea, that solution that you're providing your business clients to be able to get to their own financial analysis. I would think more FIs will likely be doing the same. What triggered that? I'm very curious. And what are
Yeah.
some things that you guys have learned so far?
Yeah, for sure. And so maybe to help kind of understand that a little bit, I can talk a little bit about our larger AI strategy and how we've approached it because we've tried to take principles in that we've learned and figured out over the last 2 years as we've developed our AI strategy, and we're going to try to apply it to this effort, which is more externally facing, right? And so back in early 2024, which seems like eons ago now, especially as you're talking about AI, right? There was a handful of us in the bank that were personally using AI for a lot of different stuff, and we said, well, we gotta get started. We got to figure out how we're going to use this thing here in the business, right? And so we spent a lot of 2024 saying, okay, let's be humble about this thing. Let's think about how we get pilots in the hands of our employees, and we've got about 150 employees. And the traditional Grasshopper employee is probably a little bit more tech savvy, I would like to think, than maybe a traditional bank employee. You just have to be to work at a digital bank like us. So we said, look, let's get an LLM in the hands of a pilot group of people. Let's make sure it's safe. Let's make sure it's secure. Let's put some guardrails around this thing, and let's see how people use it, right? And because I have ideas where I could use it for this, but that might be completely different than someone over in operations or someone in the SBA side, right? Anyways, we did that. We spent the better part of 2024 running a handful of different pilots, initially through ChatGPT, because at the time that was really by far and away the leading model. And very quickly we got a lot of good feedback on how this thing could be used. Everything from code development to helping to drive more efficient client communications and a little bit of everything in between, right? Like hundreds and thousands of different use cases. So we did that in 2024, and one of the things we did there to help drive this was try to embed a culture of, look, um, when you think about AI is not here, at least for us, to replace your job, right? Like that's not what we're trying to do with AI. And once again, going back to who we are at Grasshopper, like, we are a young, growing company, very quickly growing, right? And so relatively lightly staffed. And so we don't have the problem of having to replace a bunch of staff, and we're continuing to grow. So the thought is, can we leverage AI to continue to grow exponentially, but human capital doesn't quite grow the same way, right? And then we get some outsized benefits. And not just that, but like we want our employees to live up here a little bit more as opposed to living down here, right? Like who likes, pressing a button over here and moving that file over to this, right? Like whatever. We want people using their brains and thinking and engaging. We think that will lead to a more satisfied employee in the long run, which will lead to a better product for the client. And, it's just like up and down. That's all a good thing. So we've kind of like embedded that in the culture here, but we've also said to our employees that, look, AI is not going to replace your job. But if you don't want to embrace this thing and help us try to figure out how this thing is going to work, there might be someone who would, right? So that's been like a cultural message to us, from us to our team. And the team has responded really well. And the team has engaged with this thing and found plenty of different ways to use it. And we haven't had anyone sit back and say, no, we're not going to use this thing, right? Like we've got people using it and people figuring out different ways to make their jobs a little bit more efficient. And then they can, live in the, up here as opposed to down here. So that's great. So that was like 2024. And then this year, we kind of established a bit more of an enterprise culture around this thing. And we're a big Google shop, huge Google shop. And we moved into Gemini as our kind of preferred LLM, and that thing is embedded deeply throughout everything we do. And, I had a strategic goal this year to give a typical knowledge worker 8 to 12 hours a week back, right? Like that was a goal. So if we could, end 2025 with that done, we would consider that a success. And it's September 12th right now, and we've blown by that goal already, Theo, like blown by that goal,
Wow,
which
really?
is,
And
which is fantastic. Yeah.
that's just for
So,
your internal group of
just
employees?
just for just for internal employees. And so
Oh,
we've, and this is mostly leveraging Gemini. and just kind of vanilla Gemini. And then there's some more advanced things that we're looking to be able to do here in the short term with Gemini around agent space, a custom version of Gemini that's going to be proprietary to, some of our data. And at the same time, we're establishing a little bit more of a formal kind of data lake out in GCP that agent space will end up sitting on. So we think the future is very bright here, but just with vanilla Gemini and a lot of training, a feedback loop, making sure that we build a community internally around like, what am I using it for and how is it working for me? We've seen massive efficiencies. And so we think there's much more we can do with that in the long run. But that's been our internal AI approach. And all along we've said, okay, let's figure this thing out internally and how can we safely and securely leverage it and get to better understand it. And then at some point, we've got to have a way to go engage with our clients and allow them to do similar things. Myself, personally, have always been a PFM nut. I was Mint for decades, right? Then they ripped it away from me, and I went elsewhere to Monarch, which I love. I absolutely love. But I'll admit it. I have taken my personal banking information, exported it into a CSV file, and dumped that thing in the Chat GPT, and had conversations with Chat GPT all, up and down about my financial life. And I've always thought, man, boy, someone's got to enable that pipe right there
What did
to
your CISO say about that? I'm very curious.
well, no, I do that with my personal banking data. I would never do that
Okay.
with you. Yeah, I would never do that with our banking data, right? But my personally, right? Like,
That's so
uh,
gutsy, though. No?
yeah. Well, no. So I felt like, I anonymized some components of it, right? Like I
Okay.
ran it through a little bit of an engine to anonymize some components of it. But
All right.
Theo Chat GPT knows everything about my personal life, anyways, and the memory's getting better and better. So,
That is
so I'm
true.
one of those. I'm one of those. So, anyways, this has been our internal approach, and it's gone really well. It's gone really well, and I could talk for days about what we're doing internally with AI. But we wanted to start, thinking about how because our clients are probably thinking the same way with their own internal operations. How do we better enable that in the long run? So we always thought, let's find a way to do that in the long run. And now seems to be a good time. We feel like we're getting our hands around it the right way. And at the same time, our partners over at NARMI, who we work very close with for our digital banking experience, had the same idea, right? And so we kind of like met in the middle and said, perfect. All right, let's think about how do we safely, securely, build a pipe for our data, our clients' data, to be able to be connected out into their LLM for them to use for whatever reason. And some of this, Theo, I think comes back as well to like kind of philosophically, we believe it's the client's data, right? We are stewards of their data. It is our responsibility to protect that data, but we have certainly had a strategy here where we more want to build pipes out to the fintech ecosystem for our clients to be able to live their financial life a better way, right? And you got some banks who are doing the opposite thing, who are throwing up walls, right? Where we want to securely build channels out there. And so this is just kind of an expansion on that, a logical expansion on that, with potentially the most powerful fintech tool in history, right? So anyways, that is a ton, Theo, that I just threw out there. Let me pause there and come up for air, but hopefully that helps you understand a little bit and kind of like how we initially thought about this, and we've got a big roadmap we want to go into and stuff like that with the MCP server.
I love that backstory. I do hear oftentimes when people say, well, I need to figure out what to do with the strategy. Let's start with our internal group first and see where we can land and then move on from there. I think a distinct advantage you have is this is a perfect time. It's the perfect moment, as you were saying, right? And you're able to move forward and also the people that you serve. And it's a big hole. Um, I am not as brave as you. I had not uploaded my data off to a any external tool yet except Excel. I know I'm like, all right, Excel, here you go. But there is a big need because if you think about our day to day, right? Not consumer, but small business, fintechs, and what have you. You were mentioning we have a ton of data. We need to figure out exactly where the cash flow is. We need to know where we can optimize different parts of the operation, and we need to know how we can be nimble and do other things. And you can't do that unless you have everything together, unless you have a way to analyze where you are and move forward. And frankly, we need tools. So I like that you can identify the need and then meet them where they are. I think that's what people like to say. Um, but what's next? Because this is just the first step,
Yeah.
right? There's more coming. You don't have to tell me everything unless you want to kill me after.
Happy to talk a little bit more about like what's next and where we want to go with this. So first and foremost, right, like we released this thing like 3-4 weeks ago, something along
Mm-hmm.
those lines, to a handful of. It's a closed beta right now, right? So you got to kind of reach out to us to get involved in this. And we did that intentionally. Once again, follow the thing where we want to be careful stepping into this. We want to get client feedback. This is read only for now. Very important. This is read only. This does not have write access. This is limited to Claude for now, right? Because Claude is, right, has
Yeah.
been one of the pushers of this protocol MCP
Mm-hmm.
that hopefully the industry standardizes around. Fingers crossed. We'll see. So for now, and so that's where we are right now. And in order to connect this thing today, it's actually a relatively technical setup. You have to essentially download an API key, and you got to know a little bit of light Python to go get that
Mm-hmm.
thing kind of plugged into Claude appropriately. And so we that thing's it's not ready for the masses today, right? But it was ready for a handful of clients that we trust, and we can walk through the enrollment process, and we want to get their feedback. So very shortly, in a couple of weeks, we're going to deal with that enrollment process, and that we're essentially rolling out OAuth to be able to have a much more seamless, kind of enrollment experience through Claude and through other enabled LLMs. So we want to get that out of the way right before we expand and move on to, a further pilot or maybe a public release. And then we also, obviously, importantly, want to enable other LLMs. And so we've got ChatGPT coming shortly after that. So sometime in the next 30, 60 days, something along those lines. And we think that will, open up this ability for probably a lot more of of our clients, because not everyone uses Claude, right? We don't want to push people to a certain LLM, and we would love if we can get Gemini, turned on at some point, XAI, whatever, right? Like hopefully, once again, they all standardize around MCP, and we'll start to enable more and more and more. So that's like a little bit of our actual kind of roadmap here. I would anticipate that we're probably in more of a general release in October, and we want to get client feedback. So just like we got internal employee feedback on how they were using it, we want to get client feedback. How are you using it? Is this enabling you? Is this not enabling you? Are we all just living in our own like fintech heads here and think this is the coolest thing, but it's actually the next like bank on an Apple Watch or whatever, right? So I mean, I don't think so, but we want to hear that from clients. We want to hear from clients. So we're going to do that, and at the same time, just like we did with our internal AI push, we're going to develop a little bit of a prompt database or a prompt library, right? Like to help enable some use cases. We want to have some education around this. We want to build a feedback loop from our clients that's maybe a little bit of an advisory board type thing, where we can hear from them and then share back with other clients, what's useful and what is not useful. So once again, following kind of like the cultural stuff that we tried to put in place for our internal AI push and continue to put in place, which is, let's be humble about this. We don't know that much. Anyone who says they know everything about AI is lying, of course, right? Because no one knows everything about AI. Let's listen to how people are using it. Let's make sure it's safe and secure. And let's expand access. And then we're going to take it from there. And then maybe down the road, Theo, depending on where we go, there could be an element here of write access, right? You can imagine that, right now, like being able to conversationally engage with your bank information is one thing, but being able to have an agent send a payment on your behalf based on whatever happens internally through your internal systems, that becomes pretty powerful, and that becomes pretty different. So I would imagine at some point we will get there, but we want to be safe and secure. And you can imagine going from read to write obviously is a big leap in that safety and the security, and we've got to be certain about that before we head there.
I can't agree more. It's actually fascinating if you look at how the conversation has evolved. Because last year, when I was wrapping up manuscript for my book, there was a lot of use cases around generative AI. There's a lot of use cases around machine learning, what banks need to do X, but then what are all the messes and the layers in the middle that you still need to get through before you can get there. By the time the book was launched, all of a sudden everyone is like, well, agentic AI is the future. This is how we're all going to use it. It felt like we almost skipped a step. I love to see the future, but I think we need to be also pragmatic. I like what you mentioned, the steps and the framework that you're thinking about. How do we go from one to the next? I think is wonderful because that's how we establish trust, right? You need to walk before you run. I'm preaching to the choir, clearly. In here, what have you heard anything from the beta customers that they've been using it? Are they
Yeah.
happy? What are they using it for?
Very happy. I'll give you an example, and once again, the beta customers, the profile of the beta customer is a little bit more kind of
Tech
early
savvy.
stage startup tech savvy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the type of people that once again have a CFO who can dabble in Python to get that API key plugged in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just lends itself to that. But also we want to, those folks that might be more engaged with Claude or, with AI in their back office, we want their feedback probably first. And I'll give you so an example of this is one of our beta clients, early stage, VC backed, stepping into a Series A shortly, and they've got their monthly board meetings where you know how this goes, right? Like they want to hear mostly about growth and financial performance, right? So maybe like they want to hear a lot about that. So the CFO's got to step in and to that really armed to the teeth with the right reports and all of that fun stuff and the right presentations. So this CFO has they use Claude already, and she has built a lot of her kind of like standard monthly board decks already, and Claude understands those templates. And now with the ability to kind of like pull real time data from her bank, that thing really writes itself almost, right? And I'm probably going a little too far with saying writes itself, but it's able to pull in cash flow, it's able to pull in
Mm-hmm.
expenses, it's able to pull in a lot of stuff that gives her the ability to really automate a lot of the monthly board reporting. Not just that, but being able to better understand things like cash flow, better understand burn rate and stuff like that. And Theo, the PFM push has been in the industry has long been promised for 15, 20 years that PFM was going to be the saving grace, right, of banks, and we were going to move to these advisors versus just a typical financial institution. And for the most part, the traditional PFM approach didn't work, right? Like it turned into the money bar with PNC, which, I mean, goodness gracious, right? Or like a pie chart or a cash flow that was anything but like a realistic cash flow. And it was not predictive at all, right? Like it was all
Mm-hmm.
backwards looking. And so this is, and I feel like some others feel like we'll see. Once again, let's get feedback, but these LLMs have the ability, if connected to the right data, to be the ultimate PFM tool. And so to help our small business with a lot of that stuff that, maybe more static PFM tools really struggled with in the past. So anyways, that's been some early feedback is that's how it's being leveraged and how it's being used. And we'll see, right? Like we're also talking with a lot of clients who, use like as an industry, what we've enabled the OFX or QFX integration out to QuickBooks for 35 years or whatever. And like, do these LLMs have the ability to come in and potentially disrupt that a little bit, right? Like maybe I don't know, right? So we'll see. But anyways, right now it's being probably mostly leveraged for things like predictive cash flow, traditional personal financial management type things, and then taking that and plugging that data into other, AI processes that they may have elsewhere or templates or whatever, a board package or something along those lines. So anyways, that's been some early feedback. And once again, we think probably our early beta pool is maybe not indicative of our entire client profile. Maybe it is. I don't know. We'll see as we expand this further.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense though, because you have the target base, right? That was how we first started off with the people that you work with. Your ecosystem is a little bit different than most traditional banks, and I think that gives you the edge of trying different technology solutions out. Because until you know exactly where you can focus on, it's a little hard to boil the ocean, shall we say? Um, what are some of the? I do want to ask you because the past, gosh, 2.5 years. If I were to get a paid every time someone used the word AI and AI can do XYZ, I think I would be so rich. I don't have to sit here and talk to you. I'll just be lounging, I don't know, somewhere in the Caribbean for the next 20 years. Now, obviously, that is not happening, but there are a lot of people who talk about the promise and the potential of AI and what it can do. It can automate a lot of things. It can replace a lot of people. We've seen how that story played out with, for example, Klarna of the world, who brought people back and says, "Wait a minute, we're not quite ready. We just stuff a bunch of things in, and now we need to bring people back." There are also myths on what you could leverage the technology for without thinking about the operational pieces, the people process, all of that, the things that you
Hmm.
talk about right now. um, Speaking of then, which leads me to, I'm thinking about, you have quite a few partners in your ecosystem. And when we first started off, you talked about the partner that you use, Narmi, for digital banking, and now you're developing these solutions. How do we, as an ecosystem, look at what we need and how we bring different partners in together to build the capabilities that you need? It seems like a forever question that everyone keeps talking about. Do we partner? Do we build? What do we need? And how do we evaluate? How do we bring them in? What do you look
Yeah,
for?
yeah,
I think I'll start with
yeah.
that.
It's a great question. And I think as I think about that in our tech strategy, I lean back
Mhm.
on, my experience in my career and the building bridges right between fintechs and financial institutions. And I think that's one of the things that has helped me, enable and drive this tech strategy here for Grasshopper Bank. But we absolutely are partner heavy. We are a digital bank, right, that depends a lot on technology to be able to service and deliver for our clients. And we think we've got a pretty premier offering out there for them. But we want to control costs, right? And we want to be secure and we want to deliver quickly. And so we've developed a tech strategy here where we say, hey, look, we want to work with partners, and we don't call them vendors, we call them partners. Not everyone's a partner, but we've got about 6 or 7 partners, and then we've got 150 vendors or whatever. But we want to work with partners to deliver 80 to 85% of kind of what we need off the shelf in their product. But they've got to work with us to have a platform, not just a box product, but there's got to be some extensibility in their platform for us to be able to kind of expand in that 15% area after we're there to like differentiate and build some, custom experiences that are unique for our client base or custom integrations, be able to pull things out here or there. And so that's taken. So we feel that type of partner based approach has helped us to deliver quickly, securely, deliver a premium product, control expenses appropriately, while still being able to differentiate from, a traditional financial institution, in that 15 to 20% and how we integrate and how we pull things together. So what do I mean by a vendor versus a partner? And we actually have some sort of like really prescriptive formula internally how we call something a vendor versus a partner. But at a high level, like a partner has to is heavily involved in our client experience, and we won't bring a partner in house or call them a partner or bring them into our client experience if we don't feel like we are strategically aligned with them, culturally aligned with them, and we have the ability to work with them to help drive an impact roadmap, right? And so that's why we just won't go to like a traditional bank, like a core provider, and just say, hey, what do you got? Whatever you got off the shelf. I'm looking at Positive Pay. Whatever you got, give it to me, right? Or whatever the product may be. And a lot of banks do that. And then you find yourself really kind of like your digital strategy is somewhat commoditized, right? And you're captured and you're held hostage by a one size fits all vendor. And so anyways, like culturally, we think partners are more strategic. They've got an impact on our digital experience. We've got some extensibility, ability to drive different experiences through some custom dev on top of them, integrate them, ourselves elsewhere with other data pipes, et cetera. And most importantly, maybe we've got the ability to pick up the phone and or shoot a text to their CEO and say, "Hey, look, we've got this great new strategic initiative like, MCP. Are you guys interested in it?" Right. And that's exactly how this thing came about, right? Like we've got that type of strategic partnership with our friends over at NARMI, and we think of ideas, they think of ideas. And I like to think, and Nikhil, I don't know if you'll listen to this, or Chris, right? But like, we go to them with ideas and they come to us with ideas. And it just ends up working really, really well for us, for them, for our clients, right? And et cetera. So I'm not sure if I really answered your question there, Theo, but we absolutely have a partner heavy tech strategy here, and we differentiate between vendors and partners, extensibility, ability to impact their roadmap, right? Ability to really lean in there, and it gives us lower cost than pure custom dev, quicker to market, safe, secure, and we still get some, ability to round out and differentiate in our digital experience through some custom work and influencing roadmaps.
Would it also, and I'm venturing a guest in here, would it also be partially influenced by the team that you have? Because to be able to do all of that, right? You mentioned don't just go to a traditional core system, to be able to go to different potential tech solutions to put piece and parts together to create the roadmap and the client experience you're driving for. You also need quite a bit of technical expertise, shall we say, right? You need to know how the different pieces work together. So the people that you hire to be part of Grasshopper Bank could potentially be different than the traditional people that are working in a traditional legacy FI, perhaps.
Without a doubt, and uh, we're nothing without our people. Nothing without our people. And Mike, our CEO, says all the time that you got to really make sure two things come before anything else: listen to the client and make sure you get the right people in the door here to work here, right? Like those two things. And so we are very focused on making sure that we bring the right people on board. And I think if you look at our team and maybe look at a more traditional financial institution, you'll see that the DNA there with our team is a little bit different. We've got, a lot of like former founders on our product team, right? We've got people that have been heavily, heavily involved in the fintech ecosystem coming over to work on our business side or on our tech side, right? So absolutely, we think that the people are differentiators, and that works. Once again, Theo, like getting back to the concept of our partnerships, not just for us, right? Like we've got 150, 155 people or whatever, and we would stack them up against any other similar bank. And I am sure that we've got as capable, if not more capable people than anyone else. And it's great. And once again, this comes back to the startup culture too, right? Like we want to push decision making down. We want to get people engaged. We want to not be a traditional bank that takes 9 years to make a decision. We make decisions quickly, we execute quickly, we enable people, and we think that we have a little bit more fun and people are going to be more rewarded doing that. So that's like our approach here. But we try to make sure our partners have a similar philosophy as well, right? And so, and also, and once again, our partners, not our vendors. And as we think about our partners, we try to build relationships with those partners kind of up and down, our organization, up and down their organization as well, right? So like maybe I've got a relationship with the CTO or the CEO, right? And then our product people work very closely with their product people, and you get it, right? Like, so up and down. So we're not never single thread, and we've got the ability to impact a group of people that we are culturally aligned with, that we agree with, and we've got strong relationships with to help drive our business forward, which in turn should drive their business forward.
That's going to be a lot for other banks to learn if they try to do what you guys do. I'm just thinking out loud here, right? Because oftentimes when we talk about when someone comes in and say, "Well, I want to have an AI strategy. I want to have," first of all, that was a bad question to ask. Typically, I say, "What are the problems you need to solve first?" But thinking out loud, to be able to meet the needs of today and tomorrow's customers' business needs, right? You need the mindset, you need the technology, you need the people. And often we don't think about the mindset and the people, we just go straight towards the tech. What can we put in there? And then that is probably not the best way to do it, because you need other elements, almost like a three-legged stool, if you will. Looking ahead, crystal ball, Pete, crystal ball. What does the crystal ball tell you? What's on the roadmap for you guys? What are the things that we should be thinking about when we're thinking about key trends in business banking?
It's a great question, right? So obviously, we're going to see where the MCP server goes. We think there's something there, and we're going to stay close to that thing. So we'll follow that. But outside of that, payments, right? Like payments continue to be an ever evolving landscape, and you can't even keep up with them anymore, right? So we've been FedNow Receive for a while. We're going to have FedNow Send out shortly for all of our clients. We've already enabled it for a handful of our clients. So that's an important thing for us. Stablecoin, what does that mean? Right? Like, so what is, how could our business clients engage in that? And what would that mean for them? There's the obvious play of, right, like, safer, more secure, cheaper, quicker
Faster.
cross-border
Mm-hmm.
transactions, right? But then how do we all deal with the fiat off-ramp? Like that's still a question out there that like ever I think I have, right? And is that last mile to localized fiat going to completely ruin the entire utility and customer experience that stablecoin was supposed to drive? I don't know, right? But so that is something we're going to figure out as well. We think we certainly have an opportunity to participate in the reserve side of stablecoin, but we do think that like being able to enable our business customers to leverage stable coins to be able to transact is an important thing. So that's so payments, right? Like payments are absolutely something that we're going to continue to focus on for 2026. But also we like this bank's journey as we think about the digital journey for this bank is, we kind of started our journey from a purely digital perspective, really getting good at digital deposits. And we think we're good at that. We think we're good at, being able to get new customers and have them have a relatively seamless, origination experience, onboarding experience, service them the right way, and all that fun stuff. Digital lending is a different beast. There's more to it, right? And so we think there's a tremendous opportunity for us to take the learnings from digital deposits and translate that over to digital lending. We've already started to do that with digitizing the entirety of the SBA experience, right? And we think for the most part, or the market has not been able to do that as effectively as they've been able to do that on the digital deposit side, right? So being able to round out our offering for our digital deposits clients who have some needs on the lending side, and being able to make that a seamless happy experience kind of across the board up and down is certainly something that we spend a lot of time on in 25, and we will spend more time on in 2026. And it's like, as an industry, I feel like commercial and retail are always the really cool ones, right? SBA or SMB gets lost in the middle. It's the redheaded stepchild that like doesn't get its own experience, but we feel like we've done that the right way. And we kind of feel like digital lending is somewhat similar in that a lot of tech and a lot of practice has been put around digital deposits the right way, but then maybe there's a nice veneer on digital lending for a lot of financial institutions. But once you get that through initial application, it goes back to the same old thing, right? And so we're trying to really kind of reinvent that a little bit and spend a lot of time on that, ultimately to get credit facilities in our customers' hands more quickly, help them grow their businesses, help them in their financial lives. So anyways, digital lending, payments, and let's see where we head with MCP, but also let's listen to our clients and hear what they need.
I absolutely agree with what you say about small businesses. It is definitely the stepchild. I can recall my own experience working with my bank down the street trying to open an account for my business a few years ago. It was painful, very painful. Every experience is it's we a lot of us pay a lot of attention, to your point, on consumer experience, retail banking, but not so much on the small business. And small businesses, they don't have the amount of time that a typical customer would have, a typical consumer would have, right? They have to run the business. They have a lot of things they need to think about. So whatever it is that you guys can do to make the process and the experience more seamless and easier will be amazing. So thank you so much. I do look forward to seeing what's next with you guys. I have a feeling that half a year to you will be like, I don't know, 10, 15 years with a traditional FI. So we need to keep up. And thank you, Pete.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And for the rest of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of One Vision. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And until then, we'll talk to you all next week.